All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on January 17th, 2024. The acting clerk, Alderman Govea, will call the roll.
Mayor Donchis?
Here.
Alderman Clee?
Here.
Alderman Clemens?
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons?
Here.
Alderman Moran?
Here.
Alderman Govea is here. Alderman Thibodeau?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. First item is to elect a clerk. Is there a nomination? Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I would like to nominate Alderman Govea as the clerk for this committee.
Any other nominations? If not, we will declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of Alderman Govea, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and Alderman Govea has the honor of serving as the clerk for the next 2 years.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
All right, public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to the committee about any of the agenda items for tonight? Communications. First from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regards to contract for software maintenance in the amount of $15,933 funded from 54407 software maintenance, I will make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a multi-year renewal contract for the continued logic monitoring and support service with Logic Monitoring in the amount of $15,933. Funding will be through Department 120 Technology Maintenance, Fund 54407, Software Maintenance.
All right, Mr. Misevich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nick Misevich, Chief Information Officer for the City of Nashua. This renewal is a product that we have been using for a number of years. It monitors our critical servers as opposed to the entire server outfit. So this is just a standard renewal that we're requesting acceptance on so we can keep going with this vendor.
All right, questions, comments from the committee? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regards to contract for professional services in the amount of $210,000 funded from 53107 Architect and Engineering Services / Hunt Building Repairs and Improvements, I will make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for professional services related to architectural services for the restoration of the Hunt Memorial Building Tower windows with Cram and Ferguson Architects in the amount of $210,000. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 53107 Architect and Engineering Services / Hunt Building Repairs and Improvement.
Yes.
Amy DeRoche from Economic Development. As you said, this is for our tower window project at the Hunt Memorial Building. Cram and Ferguson is actually the original firm that designed the Hunt back in 1903, and the same architect has actually been involved with all of the renovations since 2002. So he knows the building very well. Cram and Ferguson will be doing the design for the window restoration. They'll prepare the construction documents, and they'll work through construction administration.
All right. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regards to amendment for license agreement in the amount of $10,973.31 funded from 54407 Software Maintenance, I will make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve the amendment to the Highland underlying license agreement by replacing Xing and report services modules with a full text search and reporting dashboard subscription license with Highland Software Incorporated in the amount of $10,976.31. Funding will be through Department 120 Technology Maintenance, Fund 54407 Software Maintenance.
And maybe Mr. Misevich can reduce all that to,
I'll whip out my magic wand
okay.
and make the costs go down.
No, I mean a little more understandable.
Yeah, this is an amendment to the existing contract we have with Highland. Unfortunately, they made the determination to take these two modules out of our existing maintenance and convert them to software as a service modules. So that is the reason for the amended contract to the original.
All right. Any questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to contract for professional services in the amount of $51,843 funded from 53999 other professional services / Library Plaza capital funding, I'll make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for professional services for the Library Plaza asbestos sampling and work plan with Samborton Head and Associates in the amount of $51,843. Funding will be through Department 181 Community Development Fund 53999 other professional services / Library Plaza capital fund.
Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. This is a contract in the interest of due diligence related to the redesign and reconstruction of the Library Plaza that I know many of you are very familiar with, and certainly I'll be talking to Alderman Thibodeau about this project at many points over the coming year. If folks are not familiar, there was a substantial asbestos disposal area in the close adjacency to the Library Plaza where we're planning to do the reconstruction and improvement work. And this is just in the interest of determining the extent of the asbestos that may exist or hopefully does not exist where the project work will actually take place. We're actually quite hopeful that in fact the asbestos has already been removed, but again, before we proceed with our redesign work and doing any excavation, certainly we need to make sure that we understand the extent. Therefore, we're proposing to enter into this contract for $51,843 with Sanborn Head, a well-known and a very experienced professional sampling firm and engineering firm. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the work specifically and what it will look like, but I'm happy to hopefully achieve your support this evening for this contract.
Any questions? Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Director Sullivan, you're testing basically soil and such to see if there's asbestos there. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're actually doing 15 borings, most likely. They're essentially cores of the soil to understand, particularly in areas where excavation is planned in the conceptual redesign, whether we'll run into asbestos and therefore we'll have to deal with the complications of that as a result of construction.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. And if we didn't, and there was asbestos there, would it be more costly down the road?
If I may respond, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
of
the answer is that yes, there are a variety of expenses associated with discovering asbestos. Now, I want to be very, very clear. The nature of asbestos, and I'm not the expert here, but I've had a fairly good education from other folks in the city, including Deb Chisholm, is that you may do all the sampling in the world and you may end up finding it on site anyway. And so we're doing sort of a best guess sampling effort to understand where the hotspots might be. In the event that we do discover it, even after doing this sampling work, it triggers a couple different things, one of which is an actual asbestos disposal work plan that goes to the state of New Hampshire and the Department of Environmental Services. But perhaps more importantly, it requires the involvement of an asbestos certified contractor to help with how we handle the asbestos on site. And then, of course, there's the matter of dealing with the asbestos and disposing of it. There are a variety of methods through which that can be done. There's some historical practice of putting it in landfills. I'm not suggesting our own, but there are also facilities dedicated to accepting that. This work will also give us an indication of whether or not we should anticipate those costs. It will not, in my opinion, stop the project. It only helps us hone and refine our project budget based on what we find in the soil.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Cummings. I have more comment than question. One of the things that I've learned in a lot of talking to different construction organizations and so on is that asbestos was used as land to fill when they were building and so on. So I have a lot of people who say to me, why are we finding asbestos every which way, Broad Street and so on? And it's because it was used as a fill when people were building things and so on. So Nashua is just one of many communities that is overloaded with asbestos. But I do have one quick question, and you may have already answered it, so I apologize if you have. Do we have any indication from previous documents that when Phil was brought in for that particular space in past date, that there was a potential for asbestos dumping there? And I say dumping, but it really wasn't dumping. It was purposefully done in many construction sites.
Well, Alderman Clee, I think you promoted me to Tim Cummings there, by the way, which I know he's on.
He's
I'll
online,
appreciate
right?
that. But that's, no, I'm just kidding. Yes, before I answer that, I just want to say that asbestos is fairly well understood, particularly in Nashua because of the Johnson's Mansfield site, obviously. And it is not, in the event that we find it, it's not that there's this release of contaminants or that there's a real clear, overt threat to any public health, safety, or welfare. It simply is something that has to be dealt with. So I want to say that first. There is a known asbestos cap to the northeast near the parking lot of the library site. It's a controlled cap. NHDES is aware of it. Asbestos was capped on site there. So we know that there was some in proximity, yes. What we don't know, because of when the cap was done, is what the exact extent of that cap is. We don't have a surveyed plan. We have some illustrations, I would say. And so we need to better understand the extent of that cap, which is part of this effort. But the other part is that that asbestos cap, it's possible that it could have been extended if there were other pockets of asbestos. The entire plaza area has not been excavated in full, so we simply don't know what's under it. But the proximity of the cap area does lead us to believe that there was dumping in the area, so it's possible that we could encounter it in this area as well.
Thank you, Director Sullivan.
Of course.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next communication, well, the next thing relates to Arlington Street, but there is a communication received after the agenda was prepared, dated January 16th, 2024, from Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, which I believe everybody has on their desks. So if there's no objection, we will accept that communication and place it on file. And the next item on the agenda is a contract, or an item from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Govea.
In regards to construction services in the amount of $975,050, funded from 54210 Construction Services / Arlington Street Repairs and Renovations. I'll make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for construction services for repairs and renovations to the Arlington Street Community Center, which includes repair to a collapsing rear wall of the building, ADA accessibility to the side entrance, and 2 new ADA compliant bathrooms with Martini Northern in the amount of $975,050. Funding will be through Department 106 Administrative Services, Fund 54210 Construction Services / Arlington Street Repairs and Renovations.
And I think the real Mr. Cummings is here for this.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me this evening. Before I begin, I want to take a moment and just recognize Jessica from the Arlington Street Community Center. She's here with me as well, and I apologize for not being with you this evening. I had a dog take sick, and I had to bring him to the vet earlier today. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I am here asking for approval of a not-to-exceed contract of $975,000. The price hasn't changed from what was originally provided to you in your Finance Committee packet, but what I did do was provide you with an updated, itemized scope of work with some pricing to it that will be evaluated on Friday with the team to discuss about which projects we want to move forward with. We have an obligation to move forward with the structural wall repair as well as the ADA compliance issues because we received a grant, as you may recall. We received a $1 million grant to do this project through the CDFA, and there were some requirements that we, do the things outlined in that grant. But beyond that, we have also a requirement to move this project along by the end of January. So we put this project out for proposals back before the holidays with an RFQ. We had two respondents, one Turnstone, the second Martini Northern. A small committee was developed with members from the Risk Department, the Arlington Street Community Center, the Mayor's Office, Community Development, and then through services to interview the two groups that responded, and it was the recommendation of the group that we select Martini Northern, really because of the design effort that was needed and making sure that we have the design in hand to be able to proceed along the timeline as outlined through CDFA. And so Martini Northern had Dennis Myers as part of their design build team, and we put them under contract to start design for $24,000, and now we're here this evening before you to seek approval on the construction of this community center project. And if you look at your packet, you'll see an itemized list of the various mini projects that we want to undertake, which total $960,000. We are not going to be able to do everything. We estimate that we would be looking to do hard construction of about $800,000. We are going to hold about $200,000 aside for contingency. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave my comments there. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments? Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Cummings. Make sure I have this one right. The rat slab in basement, is that because of rodent visitations?
Alderman Clee, I actually had a feeling this question was going to come up. So earlier today, I explicitly asked, what is a rat slab? Out of abundance of concern that some people would think that we may have a rodent issue. And really what this is it's an uneven of concrete, and it's used to basically seal up a basement or crawl space. So obviously it's to keep critters out. I think that's where the nickname comes from. But really what it is it's just what is referred to as an uneven pouring of concrete.
Just
Go ahead.
Just one quick question. You said that it's unlikely you're going to be able to do all of these, but you are holding off $250,000 in contingencies. If for some reason you get to the point where you don't need the contingency, would you look towards whichever one of these got dropped off?
That's correct, Alderwoman Clee. What we would do is as we get further along in the project and there's a comfort level to release the contingency down, we would then look to do some of this other work that we're going to say no to, at least initially.
Okay, thank you.
Any, Alderwoman Timmons.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very familiar with that building, so I have some questions regarding the bathrooms. One, you said you're going to add 2 new bathrooms and janitor closets. Now, the 2 bathrooms on the first floor, will they be ADA accessible? Are you going to keep those 2 bathrooms and then add 2 additional bathrooms? So how's that going to work?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So we're going to essentially demolish the 2 existing bathrooms and incorporate them into what you could refer to as the classroom space. And then in another area of the building, create 2 new ADA compliant bathrooms. And the reason why we can't do it in place is because there's not enough room to make the existing bathrooms ADA compliant. So we're basically just shifting them over on the first floor.
Mayor?
Yes.
So in essence, you're getting rid of the computer lab?
So correct. What we would be doing is sliding over the bathrooms to where the quote-unquote computer lab is that we cannot occupy right now or use due to the structural wall deficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, unfinished business, there is none. Table in committee, none. No new business resolutions or ordinances. So we're on to the record of expenditures. Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Finance Committee has complied with city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from December 29, 2023 to January 11, 2024.
Anyone? Questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the Finance Committee?
Good evening, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I wanted to talk to you folks on the Finance Committee about doing more in the city to address what's happening with changes in our right-to-know process in this city. You know, there's been a lot of issues regarding litigation on right-to-know since 2020, and the city has gone very quiet on addressing what's being done for improvements. When Kim Kleiner was here and we had issues with the assessing office, she came forward to the Board of Aldermen, which is the governing body, and she did 4 or 5 presentations to address what was being changed in the assessing office. And what that afforded the public was the opportunity to hear publicly what was going on and to respond to it if we didn't agree, because it was out there. After she left and these issues have evolved regarding other projects within the city and what's going on with Right to Know, there has been not a single public discussion about changes being made to improve the process, be more transparent, nothing. In order for me to find out what's changed in the Right to Know process in Nashua, I have to file a Right to Know. And most likely, it's going to be determined to be attorney-client privilege, which is what they did in 2021 when we tried to figure out what changes were going on. The town of Hudson and the town of Milford have redone their right-to-know policies in their towns. They were sued by citizens over issues that had to do with record compliance. And in those towns, the citizens lost across the board pretty much, ruled as moot in Milford, and in Hudson, it was the big Amazon logistics facility being built that stirred up a neighborhood to get active. And they pretty much lost in court rulings with Judge Colburn on trying to go after the developer to shut that down. But even though they lost, both municipalities and towns formed right-to-know committees with their citizens and their selectmen and worked on policies.
1
and
minute.
came up with new policies and procedures to address those issues. And what they tried to do was open communication, improve transparency, and just create a calmness when it came to addressing matters. And what I liked about the selectmen is they recognized the public's frustration, but they also recognized their city employee or their town employee frustrations. We have not done that. We refuse to do that. We put a veil up and we say, we don't have any problems here because our citizens don't win. Well, citizens in Nashua have won more than any of those other towns. Hands down, we've done better. And yet we can't get a single change made in this town to improve that process. And I was up giving testimony today on right-to-know legislation that I don't think is good for this city, and testified why, in one reason specifically because this city will not address a process change. You know, if you want to improve transparency, you have to talk about it. And you have to talk about it to the governing
That's
body,
time.
the Board of Aldermen. And I would encourage you to think about that because a lot of money is being spent on this. Thank you.
Much of that is not accurate. And the idea, I mean, many of these cases have been dismissed, which of course no one talks about. But what, the last 4 or 5 have just been dismissed by the court. Remarks by Alderman. Are there any remarks by Alderman? Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am also aware, most recently within the last 6 to 12 weeks, that the Hudson Police Chief filed a complaint against an attorney's license for filing a right-to-know request. which has resulted in litigation. So I'm not 100% sure that Hudson is the shining model to follow. And resulting from an ombudsman hearing, before the hearing, I believe the city caved, the town caved and provided those documents, and then that attorney also prevailed in his complaint regarding the ethics complaint against his license. When I heard that, I found that to be very dishonest, to try to request records resulting from an active criminal matter to be denied in a matter that is a criminal case where you have to prove your person that you represent is innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. And many of these cases, we're talking about civil stuff and access to records not related to a criminal matter. I can't believe a police chief would go to that extent to keep records from someone potentially not being found guilty of a criminal crime. So I think that Hudson maybe not be the best example to follow when it's just been happening a couple months ago. Other than that, great job to the DPW for the storm of the last couple days. They continue to do a great job. Thanks.
Any other remarks by Alderman? Alderman Timmons, Alderwoman
Thank you.
Timmons.
Thank you, Mayor Dunges. I don't have a problem with the right to know. What I do have a problem with the right to know is when you weaponize it. That's where I draw the line. There's things that do not need a right to know, and there's other things, the last speaker said should be a right to know. But when you weaponize right to know and cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars, I have an issue with that. So I hope they change the right to know in the state and through legislation, and just get it where people don't weaponize it. And I think that's what's the problem with this city, not a town, that right to know have been weaponized, and I just don't like that.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak about DPW and street cleanup. And I received a number of calls yesterday that people's streets weren't cleaned right away and so on. And I had to remind them that the same people that do our plowing also pick up the trash. And yesterday was a trash day. We're delayed by one day, so they're going to go all the way in. I know my street didn't get plowed till later, late in the day, as did a number of the other streets from people that I've heard from. I know how frustrating it must be trying to get out and trying to work and trying to get up the hills and so on, but I'm just asking people to be a little bit more patient. You may see 2 streets away from you that got plowed and you didn't. Ward 3, again, is very unique in the respect of that the Parks and Recs do a lot of our streets versus the city. So I got a call from someone down in the lower end that Berkeley Street had been plowed, and their street had not. And they're all the way down at the end. And I said to him, well, my street hasn't been plowed either, so good for Berkeley. But, Berkeley is also a very wide street, so that might have been done by the city plow. I'm trying to find out exactly which streets get done by who, so that at least I have a little bit better understanding of it. So I just ask people to stay safe, be patient, but I also know that you have to go to work, and trying to drive up Beeson Street can be treacherous because it can be very hilly as well as some of the other ones. And I know I've spoken to a few other aldermen who have deep streets that I don't have in my ward necessarily, but so I just ask for patience and stay safe. So thank you.
Any other remarks by Alderman? If not, I will turn to Alderwoman Clee.
Yes, I'd like to call for adjournment at this time.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes, and the meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned at 7:28 p.m.